This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.
You have a couple who are already struggling with day-to-day life with each other, and all of a sudden they're both trying to work from home if they're lucky enough to have jobs. If they have children, their children are all at home supposedly doing their homework or learning whatever they're supposed to be learning. And you're all trying to manage that. And there's absolutely no way to get away from each other. And so it can be a really challenging time for couples to figure out how to manage all that.
Hello, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell, and welcome to Distraction. Every time I have a guest on, I always say this is a very special guest. And in fact, all our guests are very special, so I'm not exaggerating. But I think today's guest does qualify as the most special guest. It's a repeat appearance, but each time this guest comes on, this guest does qualify as the most special guest we ever have on this podcast. Now, who do you suppose that is? Well, of course, it's none other than my own very special and only wife by the name of Sue Hallowell. In case you don't know, Sue is a licensed independent clinical social worker, otherwise known as LICSW, and truly the most skilled therapist that I know. Nobody does it better than Sue when it comes to psychotherapy. She also manages this family, and believe me, even though our kids have grown up and moved out, they still need managing. She manages me, which, believe me, even though I've grown up and not moved out, still need managing. And she manages the office that we have in New York City, and helps out with the office in Sudbury. And tonight she's going to make a special dinner of tamales, which she already gave me the recipe for this. Enchiladas. Oh, tamales, enchiladas, tacos, all the same thing. But, you know, I'm just not skilled enough to know. Anyway, she and I are at home in our house in Arlington doing the quarantine thing that one is supposed to do. But I persuaded her at the very last minute, she had no idea she was going to do this, to come on the podcast, because we get feedback whenever she comes on that she is indeed the best guest that we could ever have. So with no further ado or introduction or babbling on my part, let me introduce my wonderful wife of 31 years, mother of our 3 children, Sue George Hallowell.
Hi, honey.
Hi, Sue. You're down in the kitchen and I'm up on the 3rd floor. So, Sue, we agreed that we would talk about how it is to live together as a couple where one person has ADD, namely me, and the country has a pandemic of the coronavirus. Is that what we agreed to talk about?
Well, or when one or both people have ADHD, or couples in general, what it's like to be together when you're struggling already, or maybe even not struggling, and living together in this crazy time.
Yes, and just so our listeners know, Sue actually does a private practice and specializes in couples therapy where one or both partners have ADD.
Well, so I see other couples as well.
Yes, you have a veterinary practice on the side, right?
No, but I do see people who don't have ADHD. I just like to be clear.
Yes. You're a full-service general practice, LICSW.
Yes.
And you see me every day, so you see individual patients as well. Somehow you keep me kicking along, and so how would you like to jump in? What do you think is the greatest stress on couples now, on top of the ADD, with the pandemic that we're living with?
Well, I think that all of the challenging traits that we have are exacerbated when you're living under stressful circumstances and when you can't get away from each other, both of which are true during this pandemic. So, you have a couple who are already struggling with day-to-day life with each other, and all of a sudden they're both trying to work from home if they're lucky enough to have jobs. If they have children, their children are all at home supposedly doing their homework or learning whatever they're supposed to be learning. And you're all trying to manage that. And there's absolutely no way to get away from each other. And so it can be a really challenging time for couples to figure out how to manage all that.
Wouldn't you say a first suggestion would be to kind of reduce your expectations? It's only normal to feel irritated and irritable and short-tempered and, try to cut each other some slack?
I think that is clearly the number one answer. Everybody is feeling stressed, and that cutting expectations is really important, and being kinder to each other. But I think that one of the key things is that we have to reduce our personal expectations. I think that a lot of people are feeling like they have to be functioning at the same level that they always function. Mm-hmm. I think that when you have those expectations for yourself, then you are going to have those same expectations for your partner. And yes, when that happens, tension is going to ensue. So one of the things that we always talk about, Ned, I know one of the things that you always talk about is good enough. Mm-hmm. And I think that during this time, that has to really be the key statement. Everything has to be good enough. We can't expect ourselves to be able to be perfect parents, perfect workers, and perfect partners at this time. Wonder if we gave ourselves permission to say, maybe I'm not going to be giving 100% at work, or maybe I'm not going to be that 100% perfect parent who has their child's day perfectly mapped out with enriching activities and no screen time. I think that we have to give each other a break.
Well, you've been very good at giving me a break. Over the weekend, I was saying I have to work on this book because I got to get this book done. And you were saying, no, you really should take a rest. You can't push yourself too hard these days.
That's right. That's right. You've been seeing a lot of patients. You've been seeing so many people and working so hard. And, I think that when you put that kind of stress on yourself, you start to take it out on other people. Mm-hmm. I think also it's really important for people to really acknowledge the importance of each other's work and each other's time, right?
Yeah.
And so that you really try to work out a schedule for each other that is realistic for both of you, understanding that these children need to be taken care of, but if you're both working, it can't fall on one or the other. It's going to require some kind of schedule or managing it that'll work for both of you. Mm-hmm. Trying to take some downtime and just have fun. I have a client who basically has been under so much stress. She has been working and then basically just wanting to go to bed because she's so exhausted. And then she lies in bed fretting and anxious and can't sleep. I said, look, watch a mindless TV show. Have a glass of wine and chat with your college-age adult children.
Why don't you tell the listeners the ritual that you and I have developed after dinner?
Well, we go into our living room where I'm trying to maintain 6 feet away from Ned at all times since I was in New York City and sort of quarantining myself. And we watch a movie every night. We alternate because in good couples practice, he likes action-adventure, and I like comedies, particularly romantic comedies, sort of mindless things, and we're alternating. It's something that in our day-to-day life, I'm working late or he's working late or we're both so busy that we often get into bed at 10 or 11 o'clock, and I fall asleep immediately. But now we're trying to set aside our evenings to sit down and watch a show together, which gets our minds off of the day and all the challenges. It lets us relax and have fun, and we're spending some really nice time together.
Yeah, as well as arguing about the choice of movies.
Well, that's why we're alternating.
I've liked a couple of the rom-coms we watched.
There you go.
You definitely did not like one of the action-adventure we
No,
watched.
but I've liked some of them, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and you did hang in there. You sort of dozed off, but you hung in there. But it's nice just being with you, and I think, you don't have to be necessarily in conversation just to be with your partner or what have you. Just the connection is good to enjoy.
I think that's exactly right. And getting outside, if there's a place around you can walk without many people, just to get some fresh air is so important. Another issue that I find that's coming up with couples who are in the house all the time together, particularly around parenting, but other things as well, is that if they have different ways of doing things and they're trying to share responsibilities, it's hard not to interfere with what the other person is doing, right? Mm-hmm. I had a couple the other day, and when the dad is on, when he's sort of doing the parenting, the mom is up supposedly working, but they have different ideas about what's important, right? She's very into the child has to be on a schedule, and the child has to eat vegetables, and the child has to exercise. And the dad thinks all that's important too, but the kid is pretty difficult, and he thinks maintaining a relationship with the kid is more important. He has to pick his battles about what he's fighting with. And how do you let parents, even though they're in the same house and closer than they are at other times, when you don't see what the other parent is doing, really understand that you have to divide up those duties. And when one is on, the other has to let the other one do it, whether it's the way you would do it or not. Mm-hmm. Giving them the autonomy, even if you have to hide upstairs. There was another couple who I was talking about where the worry is that the mom would never be able to work because as soon as the children see her, they want mom, right? Mm-hmm. And these are littler kids, so you're able to do this. And there was a lot of tension developing between the couple because the mom was like, why can't you just keep the kids away? I need to work too. And the dad was saying, well, but once they see you, they don't want to be with me, and that's the problem. And so the solution they came up with was the mom gets up really early before the kids, goes and hides up in her office, and doesn't come in back until 2:00 so that they really feel like that she's not there in a very different kind of way. So it's how can you be resilient? How can you think outside the box during this time to be able to get each other through and be supportive of each other?
Mm-hmm. You can take care of things that maybe you've been putting off. Just before we came on the podcast, you and I did something that we'd been meaning to do for 20 years, namely update our will. So we got this attorney on the line, and last time we spoke to him was 1999, and we were sort of sheepish about it, but we slogged away at updating the will. I did think it was sort of ironic that during a pandemic we're updating our will, but let's hope that that's not anticipating any terrible event. But the point being, you can take care of things that maybe you've been putting off taking care of.
Well, I also think that it's about what are your priorities, right? And thinking through what our priorities are and what's important in life. When I was in a peer supervision that I do, and we were talking about what are the silver linings. When we slow down, if we give ourselves permission to slow down and not rush, maybe there are points of connection that we can make that we're too busy to do and enjoy both ourselves and our children in a way that we normally aren't. Getting things done we haven't. You and I were talking about how we watch TV. I will say one of the most interesting things to me is I have seen in our neighborhood more families out walking or biking together than I think I've seen in my entire life.
People of all ages.
People of all ages. And I think that that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
And really understanding, I have had some people say, we could die or people could get sick. And do I really hate you as much as I think? Are you really as annoying as I think you are? What are the things that did bring us together. And I do think that the slowing down may give us an opportunity to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So do you hate me as much as you think you do?
Oh, stop.
But I am as annoying as you think I am. I'm aware of that.
Well, you can be annoying, and I'm sure I can be annoying too. But
no, you're never annoying. One of the things, whenever Sue and I do these podcasts together, she always wants to be sure that we don't make it sound as if we're, the perfect couple, that we acknowledge that we do argue and can annoy one another, and I think that's true. We do,
and I think that's important because,
yes.
Again, I think the message has to be is we all have these challenges, and it's how do we manage them, and how do we try to get through them in the best way we can.
Mm-hmm. I will say one of the advantages of having ADD is a tendency to focus and get organized in times of crisis. So I have found myself a little bit more energized during this period, a little bit more focused than I normally am. I don't know if you've noticed that.
You definitely have, and that really has been interesting that you've been able to do that. And I think you're right. It might be the high stimulation of it being a bit more of a crisis. Mm-hmm. Because I do think that for some people with ADD, one of the challenges has been the lack of structure of being home. And I think that, particularly if people, if your job is increased because of this, if you're, extremely busy, well, like you, Ned, you're seeing lots of patients who are very anxious and upset. Or I have a client who works in communications and around the virus. So then I think that, this sort of high stim pushing is easy. But for some people, their job don't have a job, or their job is sort of much less busy because they're working from home. And I think that, can be a challenge to figure out how to develop routines or how to develop structure if you're not good at doing that by nature. Mm-hmm. And that, again, can cause stress between couples if one person is very structured and wants you to be more structured, or if one is working very hard at their job and needs a lot more structure, and, you're struggling with that lack of structure. That's a real challenge for people.
How do you advise people to work that out?
Well, I think it's really hard because, if it's someone without ADHD, you say, well, develop a routine, develop a structure for yourself. But we know that, that's not always easy for people with ADHD because they don't have those internal structures, and they really rely on external structures, and they bristle when someone tries to set up a structure, i.e. their partner tries to set up a structure for them. So this is really tough. And what I really try to do with people is to help them come to grips with what they struggle with themselves. So if I can get a person with ADHD who struggles with setting up sort of a structure for themselves or having that internal way of setting it up, if instead of them getting angry and defensive about it or feeling criticized, if I can really help them understand that this isn't a bad thing about them, it's just a fact. Mm-hmm. And what kind of strategies or how can they rely on the help from others to be able to set up some kind of structure so that everybody feels better? Because I find that if you can help people take responsibility for what they do well and don't do so well without making it such a big deal.
Or without shame.
Without shame or externalization, without blaming other people for trying to make them be something they're not, or internal shame, then it's easier to come up with some sort of easy sort of structure. It has to be a structure that can work for them. Not a structure that other people think is a way that they should be structured. And they have to also understand the impact on their partner, right? If instead of it just being a fight between the two of them, if they can get to a conversation where, look, I know you're not someone who easily structures yourself, but we've got these kids we're having to develop some routine for. I'm trying to get my work done. And it's really hard if I don't have your help in some sort of frameworks. And I then get more stressed and upset. If it can be a conversation around impact and around what we struggle with, then you can get somewhere. And,
you mentioned earlier, make time for fun, make time for fun. You don't think of this as being anything fun about it, but at the same time, there's no command that you have to be, absolutely shut down misery.
In fact, it's not good for you. To be shut down, absolutely shut down misery. I know this sounds trendy and it's what everybody says, but the more that you can find some ways to be grateful, or my group said today, silver linings, the more that you can enjoy little moments, the better you're going to be. Because if we get, like my client who was not allowing herself any fun, was just so pulled down by it.
Right.
That doesn't do well for anybody. It hurts her partner, it hurts her kids, and mostly it hurts herself. We have to try to push against that. And if it means that you let your children watch more TV than you normally would, or play more video games, so you and your partner can sit down and have a cup of tea or a glass of wine, or just a few minutes to catch yourself, so be it. People are going to survive. But relationships can be damaged if you don't take the time to try and nurture them, even in this time when it feels like there's so much going on.
Well, I'm very, very grateful to have you in my life and our 3 children. And me
to you.
I've been feeling that way every day, and we've been together an awful lot, and our nightly movies are a lot of fun, even though we don't always agree on the choice of the movies. But I think you're right. A time to feel gratitude in the midst of feeling oppressed and deprived and denied. I love the silver linings that you pointed out, and that's not to be Pollyanna. We acknowledge that it's terrible, absolutely terrible. People are dying and losing their jobs and their businesses and their livelihoods. It's terrible. But at the same time, it's not uniformly, relentlessly terrible, and to find as you said, the silver linings. And Sue, you are a huge silver lining in my life, and thank you so much.
Thank you, honey. I always love to come on.
Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our recording engineer and editor is my dear friend and wonderful colleague, Pat Keogh. And our producer is the delightful, effervescent, and always brilliant and imaginative Sarah Guertin.
The episode you just heard was made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.